Here we go. So the self-observant leader, and again, this isn't leader as necessarily a titled leader, but all of us and just in our organizations as we're leading others, influencing others, creating great changes. Talk us through, Ray, what your thinking was going into this model and how it can be of use to those of us who are trying to expand not only our own self-awareness, but coach others to a heightened level of self-awareness too, and help us understand what internal and external sense making is all about.
So thanks, Brenda. I co-created this model with Eric Johnson, who's a colleague of mine. He previously was with the Kelly School. Now he's an independent coach and CEO of a recovery organization. And we use this with our MBA Leadership Academy. We actually just finished teaching this year's version last week. We had the self-observant leader model out, and we started with this. Really, the whole premise was as we work with our MBA students in becoming more self-aware, we wanted them to increase their ability to be self-observant. How can I notice myself when I'm in a variety of scenarios, and how can I notice how I'm making sense of the world? What is it that's influencing me? And so the first level, if we start with the top and the center to become more self-observant, it's really first, let's just be self-honest. Do I have a good sense of how I see myself? Let's call that our identity. And do I have a good sense of how other people see me? Let's call that our reputation. And I'm not necessarily, we don't argue that you have to necessarily reconcile those to be perfectly matched. But if we have a good sense of this global identity, there's research that shows we have multiple identities. We're going to push some of that aside. Just what's the general story I tell myself about myself? And if I'm talking with others, what's the general story that gets played back? And
I,
if I have a good sense of those, I'm honest with myself.
right. I think that's really interesting that you say they don't have to be completely reconciled. So does that mean that if I know that this is the story I tell about myself, that I see these are as my values, and this is how I want to engage in the world, and this is my personality, whatever the things are that make my story mine, and I happen to know that someone else may not see me that way, that's not the end of the world.
No, I
As
think
long
it,
as I know how they see me, it doesn't always have to align perfectly with the way
right.
I.
I think it warrants some good questions. Why might they see me differently, right? Like, am I showing up differently? But the fact that it's not a perfect match, I don't worry about personally, because I think it's okay. We're very complex creatures that might even have some inconsistencies, God forbid,
Well,
right? And even
there's
in
the
those,
idea, isn't there that idea that there's kind of a front stage self and a backstage self?
yeah,
That
all of
my
Goffman's
backstage
work.
self is my story, like kicked off shoes, and this is who I am. But boy, when I'm in front of everybody, I don't know that that's exactly who needs to show up.
That's exactly right. All of Goffman's work very much informs this on front stage, backstage. So this identity and reputation, let's just say, okay, that's a placeholder. So we know where we want to be. From there, we can come to a class like this. We can go to a workshop. We can work with our boss, and we can say, what's the deliberate practice we want to engage in? How do I want to live my values? How can I be more present? How can I know my purpose? Whatever it is for you that you're working towards, and coaching can really help here. You're basically making a commitment. You haven't done anything yet, but you're saying, I want to go be this way. And then you notice life is at the bottom. And so you go live life. And as you're living life, some of these elements come out naturally, some might not, but you're allowed to suddenly notice and observe. You've got a couple different sense making or feedback processes going on. One is an internal sense making process. How am I making sense of the world? That, oh, by the way, is being filtered through things like my personality preferences, my purpose and values, my own sense of somatic awareness, like where I notice something physically in my body, that pit in my stomach that we talked about, my ability to be self compassionate or resilient. All of that informs how I make sense of a situation, right? About me or about others that I'm interacting with. And that's my internal sense making process. And coaching can help make sense of that as well, right? A coach can help us inform that more. Hey, I notice that you have a personality trait of being very detail oriented, and you get very upset when your teammates are not detail oriented, right? Maybe that's something we ought to explore of why that's so bothersome to you to build your self-awareness. That helps us become self-observant. Then we have this external side as well, running up the right-hand side. And this can come in a variety of formats. These are formats that our MBAs are familiar with. So experiential learning or systems thinking, 360 feedback, where you get feedback from everybody who's around you. We do an exercise called the user's manual, where you write a personal user's manual on how best to work with you. All of those things can give us the external perspective where sense making is coming from outside. Hey, here's what I see from you, right? They're making sense of us showing up. We just need to understand what that is as best we can. By the way, coaching can help us make sense of that. Both of those things, though, can allow us to observe. And if we have enough observational data points, then we can go in and we can be self-honest as well. Ron Heifetz from the Harvard Kennedy School summed up this up really well. He has a metaphor. He's like, listen, as a leader, we need to be on the dance floor and on the balcony at the same time. And we need to go dance and we need to observe ourselves dancing. And that's really complicated because it's hard to do both things at once. But that's what we're trying to do, is say, how can I observe and notice myself in the act in life so that I can build my self-awareness? That is how I'm showing up. How I showed up in my last meeting is how I'm showing up, right? How
Right.
Brenda experiences me in that meeting is her perspective, which is valid to me understanding my reputation and building my self-awareness.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. When you started with daily life, and I love that the model emphasizes that this self-observant leader approach, or becoming more self-honest, getting my identity and my reputation sorted out in my head clearly. I don't have to. It wouldn't hurt to, but this isn't something that always has to happen in a classroom or in a special engagement. That I think I've heard you use a term, just drafting off life as the tool. Could you talk to a little bit about what that phrase means to you, and how all of us can just use life as this mechanism for continuing this cycle? And I also love that the system is all interrelated, that
Yeah.
there's just that continuous feedback.
Yeah, at when I used to work at Procter and Gamble, and at Procter and Gamble, I had an older marketing director, and you walked in, and he was very intimidating. And on the front of his desk that you would face if you had to have a conversation, it said, "Training is happening now."
Ah,
And his point was like, we're training all the time, right? And it's there's a two-way street here. And I think self-awareness is quite a bit the same. I mean, what I love about the work I do as a coach working on leadership is there's not a day that goes by that you don't have a chance to work on this stuff. And it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be an hour-long journaling session. It can be simply noticing, how am I showing up in my professional life today? Right? Can I write down 3 values that I want to honor, and can I identify where I did that in a day? That's building self observation and self awareness. When I'm on family vacation, am I showing up consistently with how I want to be with my family? Right? Or am I in some ways different, or whatever it happens to be? So, what I have hope for is this is a very, while the model looks a little complicated, it's not intended to be. It's a very accessible. You have the ability to observe yourself in lots of different situations, right? Many of us get behind the wheel of a car and we become different people, right? And that's, we get frustrated with traffic and we let everybody know about it. That's something to take note of, right? That's how we show up in various contexts, is it says something about us, and that's all a component of being self-awareness. Now, what I would also try to say is, I'm a big fan of withholding judgment as long as possible. So just because we
about
build
what you're
awareness
seeing.
about what we're noticing,
Okay.
and trying to build that self-compassion muscle to say, if I didn't show up the way I want to today, how might I evolve that or change that for tomorrow? Right? I have a chance to get better. And what is that I need to do to get better? So as long as possible, observe, withhold judgment, practice self-compassion, try to get more towards your intention.